Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
It is midday, and this is Africa Update, coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Africa from an African perspective. I'm Lulu Gaboo. I'm in studio with Onele Nzinzi, Msibudi Makura, and Chanduko Legege. Coming up in this hour, Cameroon's opposition leader declares victory, and the peace deal summit underway in Egypt following successful first phase. But first up, the news with Onele Nzinzi and our sports headlines with Msibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu, and greetings to our listeners. Cameroon's opposition candidate Issa Chiroma has urged President Paul Biya to accept defeat and honor the truth of the ballot box. Chiroma has declared victory in the country's October 12th presidential election. He made the declaration in a speech on his Facebook page from his hometown. Vote counting is currently still underway, with the 58 departmental commissions ready to submit the results to the Constitutional Council. The Premier of South Africa's Limpopo province, Paul Ramathuba, says the process of identifying the deceased passengers from the bus crash on the N1 near Louis-Trichardt will begin tomorrow. The bus, which was reportedly travelling from Gqeberha to Zimbabwe and Malawi, veered off the road and down an embankment, resulting in the death of 43 people. Ramathuba has appealed to family members of the victims to come forward.
We have already started to make a call to the families, those that knows that their loved ones were in the bus, to contact Dr. Rally Jiba from Louis-Trichardt Hospital, who is our center, so that he can be able to check if it's one of the admitted or patient or survivors, or if it's one of the deceased. So tomorrow we'll be starting with the postmortems. We are saying families must come, and then we start to do that identification.
An agreement has been reached between evidence leaders in South Africa's Madlanga Commission and media houses Daily Maverick and News 24 over the opposed bid for in-camera hearings. The Madlanga Commission has made a draft order a final order. This comes after Daily Maverick and News 24 opposed the application by the evidence leaders to have the witnesses testify in a closed session. Handing down the ruling this morning, Commission Chair, retired Constitutional Court Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga, ruled amongst other things that the witnesses scheduled to testify over the next 2 days will testify remotely through an intermediary. Tabang Bowe explains.
The witness will testify remotely and off camera. B, the answers of the witness to questions posed by the evidence leaders will be repeated publicly through an intermediary whose voice will be broadcast live as he or she repeats the witness's words. The witness's anonymized statement with exhibits will be displayed live on screen as the witness testifies.
A Kenyan police officer stationed at one of the gates of the president's official residence in the capital, Nairobi, has died after being shot with an arrow. Officials say the 56-year-old man, armed with a bow and arrows, approached officers at the gate of State House and was ordered to surrender. Instead, he moved forward and shot PC Ramadan Mantaka in the ribs. The policeman was immediately taken to hospital but died while undergoing treatment. The attackers raised questions about possible security lapses. The State House is one of Kenya's most heavily guarded locations. Lastly, there have been celebrations across Israel and Palestinian territories, with yesterday's hostage and prisoners exchanges marking a significant step towards ending 2 years of war in Gaza. In a crucial stage of the ceasefire agreement, almost 2,000 Palestinians were released from Israeli jails. In return, the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages held by Hamas have returned home. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Asher.
It started very early this morning, the hostages on the move out of Gaza. 20 in all, including a musician, twin brothers who'd been held separately, and a father of 2 little girls, Omri Miran. Each one an emotional reunion, hugging each other as if they wouldn't let go. For Palestinians, too, there were tearful reunions. Nearly 2,000 prisoners and detainees released. In Israel, some waiting for the remains of their loved ones were disappointed. Only 4 bodies were returned. More should come in the days ahead.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, so it's the final match day of the Africa World Cup qualifiers. That day is finally here, while India complete a series clean sweep over the West Indies. Details coming up at 12:30.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Oh, thank you to Onele Ntsinzi with our news update and Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:06 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406-9126 hashtag Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Well, today on hashtag Africa Update Ask, we look at Cameroon and Cameroon's opposition leader having declared victory on Sunday's presidential election, despite the government warning that only results announced by the Constitutional Council can be considered official. Now, our question to you today is, what do you make of the call by Issa Chiroma Bakari? And share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:08 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa. Okay. Goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Our key mediators to the Gaza ceasefire agreement have penned their signatures to a document endorsing the plan during a peace summit of world leaders in Egypt's resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh. The leaders of the United States, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey were joined by others that included in Egypt hours after all the living Israeli hostages were released from Gaza in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, as U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the war in Gaza was over. Now, the UN Secretary General, who is also in Egypt, hailed the mediation efforts and acknowledged the indispensable role of the International Committee of the Red Cross in facilitating the releases in both a safe and humane manner. Sharon Bryce-Peace has more.
After addressing the Israeli Knesset earlier in the day, President Trump jetted into Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh amid high praise for Washington's role in securing a ceasefire in Gaza that has not only ushered in a hostage release and prisoner exchange, but also seen scaled-up humanitarian supplies into Gaza. and a symbolic signing ceremony among the four main mediators.
After years of suffering and bloodshed, the war in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. Civilians are returning to their homes. The hostages are reuniting. We've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East, and it's a very simple expression, peace in the Middle East, and we've heard it for many years, but nobody thought it could ever get there, and now we're there. I want to congratulate everybody sitting in these first few rows and standing behind me.
Israel earlier announced it was awarding the state's highest cultural honor, the Israeli Prize, to the U.S. president, followed by Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi later announcing the awarding of the Order of the Nile, its highest state honor, to President Trump, for his efforts in securing the agreement to end hostilities in Gaza.
The whole regional populations have always been relishing the right to their independent nations. The Palestinian people is not an exception. They too have the right to self-determination and to aspire for a future where war doesn't loom over, own the right to enjoy freedom and to live in their independent state, a state that lives side by side with Israel in peace, security, and mutual recognition. Peace is not only crafted by governments, but also built by peoples when they realize that yesterday's rivals could be tomorrow's partners. I avail this opportunity to appeal to the Israeli people. I say, let us turn this historic moment into a new beginning of just some peaceful coexistence.
As the focus now turns to entrenching the ceasefire, the release of deceased hostages, scaling up humanitarian relief further, and then the long, arduous task of rebuilding Gaza that has largely been reduced to rubble, as President Trump explained.
In one sense, it's so horrible that it could have taken place, but in another sense, it's so beautiful to see a new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part, because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the Arab and Muslim nations who helped make this incredible breakthrough possible.
The UN welcomed the renewed momentum through spokesperson Farhan Haq.
The Secretary General calls on all parties to consolidate the ceasefire and transform it into lasting peace. He appeals to regional and international actors to seize this moment of respite, to restart a credible political process that can deliver the outcome of two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security within their secure and recognized borders on the basis of pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, in line with international law, UN resolutions, and other relevant agreements.
The United Nations and its partners have already rapidly scaled up operations across Gaza, seeking to reach communities in areas that were cut off for months. The UN reports that within Gaza today, humanitarians are now able to move more easily in many areas, working to increase the production of meals and bread bundles, as hundreds of thousands seek to return to their homes or to where their homes once stood in the largely destroyed enclave. The UN says it has also secured Israeli approval to transfer more aid into Gaza, clearing a pipeline of some 190,000 metric tons of relief from across the region. Stockpiles, the world body says, are ready to move, with some already on the way. I'm Sherman Bryce-Pease in New York.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 14 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our Cameroon's opposition leader, Issa Chiroma Bakari, has declared victory in the country's presidential election in a speech posted on social media, calling on 92-year-old incumbent President Paul Biya to concede. The declaration comes despite a government warning that only results announced by the Constitutional Council can be considered official. And to speak to us further on this, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Yaoundé in Cameroon, Moki Kinzaga. Moki, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thanks and good afternoon. Greetings from Yaoundé.
Now, Muki, Bakari declaring victory, how has this been received by government and Cameroonians alike?
In fact, there have been mixed reactions across Cameroon following his declaration yesterday that he is the winner of the October 12th presidential election. He said they should recognize him because it's the will of the Cameroonian people and is beginning a new era said to be that of the people who have made the choice for a change. He called on all government officials not to make themselves enemies of the people they have to serve, and then advised the military not to listen to calls by the ruling government to continue, for Paul Biya to continue being in power. Now, the reaction has been mixed, as I said, because some people really support Issa Chiruma and they think he won, but others are saying he should have waited to see the proclamation of results by the Constitutional Council in 15 days, as the law says, before he can start making such declarations. So there have been mixed reactions. Those who support Chiruma says he did a good thing. Those who don't support him say he didn't do a good thing.
Now, he is the former territorial administration, brother Paul Atanga Nji, warning recently that any publication of results would be considered high treason. Now, this is the Minister of Territorial Administration. Now, would Bakari have taken this into account before issuing his statement? What is making him so bold?
You know, Issa Chiruma Bakari was minister for 20 years under the government of Paul Biya. He served as government spokesperson. So he knows the house, he knows where he has been serving for a long time, and he's counting on his knowledge. And there have also been claims that there are some people within the system, some people who support Biya, who are also not happy with his long stay in power, who may stand behind Bakari. So Issa Chiruma is counting on his knowledge of the system he has served for a long time, and secondly, counting on the Cameroonian people to protect him. He himself said it, that as he's ready to defend his victory, he should be protected by the Cameroonian people. The Minister of Territorial Administration said high treason, that if Bakari declares himself as high treason, but Bakari has defied and even said if the Minister of Territorial Administration thinks he's strong enough, bold enough, and has enough support, he should come and arrest him. That was an open challenge Bakari gave the Minister of Territorial Administration in particular and the government of Cameroon in general.
Now, we understand that there were some tensions in some parts of the country. What's the situation now?
Now people are calm now. People have gone back to work. They also believe that they need peace and serenity. They are also waiting for the results to be proclaimed. It is true, some results have been coming up saying that Biya is the person who won. Others are claiming that Chiruma won, and civil society groups have been. That is what Bakari himself has said. He says, although he knows he's winner, he will be declaring the results today, and then he will wait also for the official proclamation to see whether they tie with what he is saying. So there is general calm. People are going to work, they're carrying out their day-to-day activities, especially in Garwa, where crowds came out and confronted the military. So now there is general calm throughout the country, but calm and expectations that the results should be out with the verdicts of the ballot respected.
Now, just hypothetically speaking, let's say incumbent President Paul Biya does win the people's vote and gets another term in office. What does this mean for Cameroonians?
It means something to the whole world, not only to Cameroon, and because Biya will be making history. He would have served for 50 years, because it's already 43 years now. The mandate ends in 2032 when Biya will be about 100. So you will get the news, record in the whole world that somebody who was 100 years, served his country as president for 50 years. So that is history making, is unprecedented in the whole world. Secondly, Cameroonians most of them have surrendered their faith. They say, they know that Mr. Biya will be there until maybe he dies in power. So there's no need even advocating and coming out strongly for change. A lot of people are preparing for elections. They say the after Biya period, that should be in about 2033, 32, when there are going to be fresh elections. So some people have surrendered. They say nothing will change now. Others are still thinking that with the mobilization to vote and the many youths who came in to protect their votes, something may change. It is balanced on both sides.
Well, Mugi, we are watching this very closely, and I guess 2 weeks is around the corner, so it's something that we were all looking forward to. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
You're welcome.
That's our correspondent in Yaoundé, Cameroon. That's Moki Kinzeka joining us on the line. It is 20 after 12 Central African Time.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete, koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhudzidwa funani chithandizo, chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani ku mawayilesi onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julayi kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhudzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wayilesi yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Afrika.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
It is 22 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A third and final G20 Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group technical and ministerial meetings are currently underway in Cape Town, that's in the Western Cape of South Africa. On Monday, delegates opened discussions under South Africa's presidency, highlighting the need for fairness, cooperation and accountability in tackling global environmental challenges. As the week continues, focus now shifts to negotiations that will shape the Cape Town Declaration, expected to be adopted by ministers on Friday. Joining us to unpack the outcomes from day one and what lies ahead for the rest of the week is South Africa's Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Dr. Dion George. Dr. George, thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Now, what are some of the key outcomes or highlights from the opening day of the G20 meetings yesterday?
Well, as you mentioned, we've just begun, and yesterday was dominated basically by the preamble with the discussions on, what is the introduction part really of this, because that sets the tone then for the rest of the declaration. Things are going very well. I mean, it is so that there are quite a few different views on how things should be worded in particular, and then also how particular things should be tackled. So we know that in the multilateral space, it is so that, you have to take a lot of different views into consideration. So when multilateralism is concerned, you have to then make sure that everyone is happy. And also, as we're working on consensus, we have to also do the same. So we're mindful of the fact that there are quite a few different views, but I do think we're converging on a number of issues, such as biodiversity, such as clean air, such as also the conversation that we're having on the oceans and chemicals and weather services, etc. So there's lots of commonalities that we do have.
Now, Minister, you mentioned that South Africa's G20 presidency brings an African perspective to the agenda. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, in practical terms, I think what it does, it brings Africa to the forefront of people's thoughts and also imagination, because for too long, Africa as a continent has really been neglected. We have not been on the front of the thoughts in terms of how are we going to respond to this crisis that is the climate change existential crisis. And particularly in Africa, we have the difficulty of drought and desertification, and we do need to respond to that. We also have the issue, there's plastic pollution on the beaches in Africa, and also we have the scourge of illicit wildlife trafficking. So there are a number of things that unite Africa in terms of what it is that we need to do into the future. And I think that's the crucial thing. So specifically what we've done in this G20 for South Africa and Africa is we've highlighted, for example, illicit wildlife trafficking. We want some kind of declaration on it. Also, for the very first time, the air quality part has been a standalone item, because that does also affect us very much in Africa, and of course chemicals, because we do have a situation where we have dumping, for example, in Africa, and that's something that needs to be stopped as well. So there are a number of uniting items that we as South Africa, on behalf of Africa, can make sure we bring to the forefront of the thought processes.
And how are discussions this week helping to shape the Cape Town Declaration that will be adopted on Friday?
Well, I think the crucial thing is that as you were mentioned earlier on, is that this is the third and final, basically, set of meetings, because the technical people are still meeting. They started yesterday, and they will continue until Wednesday. And then, of course, the ministers have already started arriving, and then there'll be further discussions on the ministerial declaration. So the first discussion that we had was in March, and that was the first meeting that we had. That was a virtual meeting, and that's where we set out what the agenda was. And so we added on water security, for example, as well, and then we also highlighted the other areas that were then discussed when we had the meeting in the Kruger National Park in July. And that's synthesized as well. So what's almost like a funnel. So we started off broad, so what are the key issues we want to talk about? Then in the Kruger National Park, we started talking about the detail, and then now we're actually honing down on the ministerial declaration, because obviously what comes out of the Cape Town Declaration is then the intent and action, because implementation is key. And then, of course, the next country to take over from South Africa will be the United States of America. They will be the G20 president next year, and the year after that will be the United Kingdom. And then, of course, we now form a troika between South Africa, the US, and the UK. And also, very importantly, we're now switching track in a way, because it's been the developing economy countries that have been leading the G20 for the past few years. Now we are also seeing now the developed economy countries turn. So it's very important that the African agenda is very firmly placed, so that sight of it is not lost as we move into the new presidencies. And that's why we formed the Troika, and that's why we have very close discussions now, so that we don't lose sight of the important things we discuss here.
And just finally, the legacy that South Africa will leave as the presidency. Just talk to us about that.
Well, there are three things that I am very keen on from a department's perspective and the country's perspective. Is we want something on illicit wildlife trafficking. We want something on the continuation of discussions on the plastic treaty that we do need to have, a binding plastic treaty. And, of course, air quality is very, very important for us. Those are the key three things that we think will come out of here, and that will be hooks onto the future. There are obviously a number of other areas, but those are the key things that we believe will be memorable, because we need to take the world forward on the plastic treaty, that the discussions that failed in Geneva. So we need to take that forward. And then, of course, for the very first time, if we look at the actual phenomenon of air quality, that we must pay attention to that. and then combating illicit wildlife trafficking. Big pieces, but very important pieces.
Minister, very quickly, just in wrapping up, in terms of accountability, where do you stand? What is the way forward in terms of accountability, time frames, and so on?
Well, crucially, we must do what we say we will do. And that is why I've said also to all the delegates when we started, is that this is an opportunity for us. Now that the world is in quite an awkward position, let us agree concrete, tangible steps that we're going to take and then implement them, because otherwise you just have a declaration and it is not meaningful. So what I am very keen on doing is to agreeing, right, we're going to do X, for example, on illicit wildlife trafficking. Okay, what does that then mean? Does this mean we have a specific set of actions, and then who does those actions? And then we must look back and then measure ourselves on it. So I'm very, very keen on that as well. That is why I think it does not have to be an extremely wide set of boxes. For example, what you want is a few key issues that you can go then and drive them relentlessly and get things done. That's what we need to see happening.
Well, Minister George, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there for today. That's South Africa's Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Dr. Dion George, ending that discussion. It is 12:30 Central African time, and our news headlines up next with Onelin Zinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Madagascar's embattled President Andry Rajoelina says he has dissolved the National Assembly, which is the lower house of parliament, with immediate effect. This came after the opposition said it would start impeachment proceedings against him in parliament. Cameroon's opposition leader Issa Chiroma has declared victory in the country's presidential election in a speech posted on social media, calling on 92-year-old incumbent President Paul Biya to concede. And U.S. President Donald Trump says he will decide what he thinks is right on whether there should be a two-state solution in the Middle East. Yesterday, he signed the first phase of his Gaza peace deal that he's seen hostages and prisoners released. Channel Africa News, I am Onelin Zinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It's a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Mosibu Dimakura with your latest sports news at the SAWA. So South Africa will be hoping to exercise the ghost of 2012 when they host Rwanda at the Mbombela Stadium in South Africa's Mpumalanga province tonight. So during the 2012 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Sierra Leone, Bafana Bafana players celebrated when they thought they had qualified for the AFCON tournament, only to discover it was not the case. However, Bafana Bafana's chances of qualifying for the World Cup in 2026 in the Americas are hanging by a thread because Benin are top of Group C. Bafana Bafana captain Ronan Williams hopes they will bury the ghost of 2012 at the same venue.
Maybe now it's time to right our wrongs from so many years ago, because people still mention that, and that is something that sits with Bafana Bafana will probably be there forever. So hopefully we can rewrite the script. And like I said, I believe in fairy tales. We go again. Calculators will be out at Mbombela. So hopefully things can go in our favor now. Hopefully the football gods will be on our side. We all will be dancing. Maybe we'll rock that same dance that they done that time.
Well, so Bafana Bafana lost their only match against Rwanda in the qualifiers before they forfeited the Lesotho match by 3 points and 3 goals after fielding an ineligible player in Teboho Mokoena. Williams says the painful memory of their trip to Rwanda, where they played on an artificial waterlogged pitch, will motivate them this time around.
Yeah, obviously we know what they put us through that side. And that's a motivation. The players know how difficult it was, the trip. I think we're the only team that played on that field. And we shouldn't have played there, even with the storms, the waterlogged field. I can't. But also, be a team who we don't want to complain too much. We just want to go out there and play. We could have easily protested, but we didn't want to.
On to some cricket news now. India wasted little time in completing a clean sweep over the West Indies to give Shubman Gill his first Test series win as the captain of the side. Opener KL Rahul hit an unbeaten half-century as India sealed a 7-wicket victory on the fifth morning in Delhi. It also keeps the host side third in the early stages of the World Test Championship standings, behind Australia as well as Sri Lanka. The win was set up by centuries in the first innings by Yasavi Yasowal on 175, as well as Gill himself on 129 not out. The West Indies were bundled out for 248 in reply, but did manage to fight back and also make India bat again with a better second innings showing. So John Campbell as well as Shire Hope hit dogged centuries, taking the Taurus to 273 for 3 before Hope was bowled out by Mohammad Siraj and the middle order collapsed. 6 wickets fell for 40 runs before some late hitting by number 11 Jayden Sales added enough runs to give India a chase of some sort. So the West Indies meanwhile will begin a tour of New Zealand on the 5th of November. Still on a cricket news, Chloe Traon as well as Marzan Kamp combined to lead the Proteas women's side to a third successive win at the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup when they defeated Bangladesh by 3 wickets yesterday. Following a shaky start with the bat chasing 233 for victory, Traon top scored with 62 runs while Kamp also contributed 56 before Nadine de Klerk back end 37 sealed a dramatic victory for the Proteas side. Now Traon explained just how they rebuilt their innings and just how they stayed also calm at the crease to help the team get the job done.
Yeah, I wish I could stay in for the last couple of runs and actually take the team over the line. But yeah, I've just been taking the responsibilities and not coming in really early in the India game and today as well. Myself and Marizan just spoke about taking it as deep as we could and just tick it over. We knew we had time on our hands and we knew we had Nadine in the back end, so we didn't want to bring it in too early. So we kind of went low risk and still kind of chipped away at the runs as much as we could. And I'm just happy we're still finding ways to get over the line.
And finally, Irish Olympic swimmer Shane Ryan has joined the Enhanced Games, a multi-sport competition that will allow athletes to use performance-enhancing substances without being subject to drug tests. Now, Ryan, who was born in the USA, competed in 3 successive Olympic Games for Ireland before announcing his retirement from the sport earlier this month. Ryan joins Team GB Olympic swimmer Ben Proud, 4-time Greece Olympian Christian Gomolev, as well as US sprinter Fred Curley, in announcing his intentions to compete at the Games. The first Enhanced Games are due to take place in Las Vegas in 2026. Each event awarded a total prize purse of $500,000 as well as $1 million on offer for competitors who break the world record. It's 12:37 p.m. Central African Time. That's a wrap of your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thank you. Good afternoon. With the business update, I am Chanduko Ligege. South Africa's Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Zuko Godlimbi, has called on local businesses to broaden their horizons, not by looking overseas, but by looking closer to home. Speaking at the opening of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition's 3-day export symposium and expo in Midrand this morning, Godlimbi said one of South Africa's major weaknesses is viewing international markets as being outside the African continent. He urged exporters to strengthen their footprint across Africa.
One of our major weaknesses in South Africa, including South African business, is the tendency to think about international markets as outside the African continent. One of the things that we have to get right is to improve the footprint of South African exporters into the African continent.
The Forum for South Africa has called on Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi to fire the provincial head of Department for Health and Wellness, Dr. Lisiba Malotana, instead of suspending him. This comes after Lesufi's office announced today that Malotana has been suspended with immediate effect. In a statement, the Premier said Dr. Darren Beckley has been appointed to act in his position. Leader of the Forum for South Africa, Tebogo Mashilombane, says Malotana's suspension is long overdue.
The Forum for South Africa welcomes the long overdue suspension of Lisiba Malotana. It is without doubt that under his leadership, tender corruption manifested. As a result, lives were lost. The attitude and posture of corruption at the Gauteng Health must cease to exist. FOSA therefore call on the Premier Panyaza Lesufi to not be lenient towards the HOD. Instead, he must fire him so that a strong message can be sent to all corrupt individuals across the province.
Shell says it's taken a final investment decision together with Sunlink Energies and Resources Limited on the HI gas project offshore Nigeria, with production expected to start before the end of this decade. The project, once completed, will supply 350 million standard cubic feet of gas per day at peak production to Nigeria LNG, which produces and exports liquefied natural gas to global markets. Just over 2 weeks after Peter Mutharika was sworn in as Malawi's president, his government has dissolved all boards of parastatal organizations and state-owned enterprises. Days after the dissolution of the boards governing state-owned enterprises, the Department of Statutory Corporations issued an immediate blanket suspension of all recruitment and major procurements across all parastatal organizations and SOEs, saying the move is aimed at preventing irregularities during the governance vacuum. George Mango offers other possible reasons for the dissolution.
At the moment, there hasn't been any, formal complaint from the board as to whether some of the officials were trying to siphon money or engage in corrupt activities. But, it's just a suspicion that whenever government changes any leadership that's the boards, one, to shut all the leaking buckets of water or financial inflows. And they also wanted to avoid some top brass in these parastatals from maybe employing their own loved ones or maybe channeling financial resources into their own pockets for their own gains.
The US and China have begun charging additional port fees on ocean shipping firms that move everything from holiday toys to crude oil, making the high seas a key front in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. A return to an all-out trade war appeared imminent last week after China announced a major expansion of its rare earths export controls, and President Donald Trump threatened to raise tariffs on Chinese goods to triple digits. But after the weekend, both sides sought to reassure traders and investors, highlighting cooperation between their negotiating teams and the possibility that they could find a way forward. Now let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,460 naira. In Botswana, the dollar is 13 pula 21. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 8. Zambia, 22 kwacha 61. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 49. In Russia, Russia 80 rubles 62, India 88 rupees 68, China 71.11, South Africa 17 rand 32 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $4,140, platinum at $1,656 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $61.96 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Well, thank you to Chanduko Ligege with our business news. It is 12:44 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. South Africa's former Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, has called for strong global action to protect women affected by war and for greater female participation in peace building and international decision making. Speaking at the Women 20 Secretariat Summit in Johannesburg in the Gauteng province of the country on Monday, Pandor warned that conflicts such as the war in Gaza, a civil strife in Sudan, and the war in Ukraine have had catastrophic impacts on women, from sexual violence and loss of livelihoods to the destruction of education and healthcare systems. Our Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this.
Former South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor's remarks follows the recent peace deal signed between Hamas and Israel aimed at ending the siege and destruction in Gaza, a development widely welcomed by nations across the world. The agreement, which includes the release of hostages from both sides, has been seen as a hopeful turning point in one of the most devastating conflicts of recent years. Addressing the plenary, Pandor reflected on the impact of various conflicts on women.
All of us know from the war on Gaza, from the civil conflict in Sudan, and from the war on Ukraine, that the impact of war on women is catastrophic. The war crimes of rape, of genocidal actions, of lack of access to humanitarian aid, all exacerbate the dismal position of women and reverse hard-won victories of empowerment. When all the universities in Gaza are bombed, female students are deeply affected. When nurses are targeted in hospitals and health facilities, women are deadly in the impact of this.
She urged women at the W20 summit to actively lead the recovery of Palestine rather than playing lip service.
Women 20 should be advocates for reconstruction of Gaza, advocates of freedom for Palestine, and advocates of security for Israel, and advance this by going beyond rhetoric and actively participating in fora that make decisions on these matters. We shouldn't be casual commentators and observers of society. We should participate in processes of change and make our views known.
Pandor emphasized that women must unite globally, take active roles in international organizations, and become vocal advocates and leaders for peace and progressive development.
Women should also participate in emerging organizations of the South, such as BRICS, the African Union, the Non-Aligned Movement, and other emerging organizations, and be in them to articulate ideas that promote progressive internationalism and development priorities. We should also have greater effort at collaboration as women and include a focus among ourselves as women organized worldwide on campaigning for world peace. I believe such cooperation would lead to a powerful global influence of women activists and women leaders. And we render ourselves silent by believing only politicians can speak on peace, and we cannot. We must be advocates for peace and be activists for global peace.
She underscored the urgent need for reform of the United Nations, calling for more inclusive and gender-balanced participation in shaping its structures and decision-making processes, which are currently dominated by men and focuses mainly on power dynamics like Security Council membership and veto rights.
The recent global conflicts have strongly affirmed the need for us all to urgently address deliberate reform of the United Nations. The United Nations is our premier world multilateral body, and we need to support it and have cogent ideas about deliberations on the reform of its mechanisms, its institutions, and its structures. Deliberations on this important matter have begun, but they tend to be male-dominated and largely, as always, centered on access to Security Council membership and exercise of the veto.
With women at the center of marginalization, Channel Africa spoke to Fiona Matovu, a delegate from Uganda, on what should be included in the final declaration to be presented to the G20 heads of states in November, and this is what she said.
I think we have, obviously, violence against women is really important. It's a key aspect. And I think it is important, first of all, that as we talk about these topics, we're talking about accountability. Often we talk about intentionality, but implementation becomes problematic. So we need to consider implementation. We need to consider how we are holding those that are saying are going to do something accountable, particularly governments, organizations. We want to understand how are you ensuring that you're measuring what you're doing. And I think one of the things they talked about inside there was the importance of the quality of the measurement, not necessarily quantity. And I think historically we know that we've built on the quantity. You know, this is how many people we have supported. This is how many entrepreneurs we have. This is how many women are now engaged. But we want to see what does that engagement look like.
Meanwhile, Angolan Embassy's First Secretary in South Africa, Egna Costa Alegre de Souza, is hoping for a strong action from the leaders come November.
I hope we can provide a stronger foundation for these hopes to materialize in serious and consequential action in the final leaders' declaration. If we cannot do that, we're going to be lost.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa will be live at the 14th Oppenheimer Research Conference, a leading platform for natural and environmental science. Now, convened by Oppenheimer Generations Research and Conservation, it brings together top scientists, policymakers, and conservationists looking to advance solutions to global environmental crises in an ever-changing world. Now, Channel Africa is on the ground and will be interviewing some of the leading African voices, shaping meaningful approaches to some of Africa's most pressing challenges. Stay tuned.
Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is 12:52 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina has reportedly fled the country. This comes after the president's office announced that Rajoelina would address the nation on Monday evening. Youth-led demonstrations erupted in the former French colony in late September over water and power shortages. They have since escalated into an uprising over broader grievances, including corruption, bad governance, and the lack of basic services. There have also been calls for the president to resign. Bonolo Maribe has more.
We just want one thing, it's Rajoelina move.
Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina is facing widespread protests calling for his resignation as Malagasy citizens grow increasingly disillusioned with his government. This comes as police and protesters clashed again this past weekend, marking the fourth week of protests that began in late September. Inspired by youth movements in Kenya and Nepal, these demonstrations are the largest the island nation has faced in recent years. Rajoelina responded to the unrest by saying he was ready to listen and find solutions to problems facing the poor island nation.
There are associations, agencies, and countries that finance this movement, and there are those who plan to seize power without going through elections, but simply take power and seek only to exploit Madagascar's mines as in other African countries. No one will benefit from destroying the country. That is why I'm telling you that if I'm here, if I'm standing here, I'm ready to listen, and above all, I'm ready to lend a hand to find a solution for the country.
However, protests continued, with Madagascar's CAPSAT military unit announcing that it was taking command of the nation's armed forces, a day after joining anti-government protests that have gripped the country. Military official Colonel Solo Ina Rampanarivo.
The agency is the restoration of public order and the daily lives of all Malagasy people. We, the military, stand for the homeland. This is why the command of the Malagasy army, whether air, land or sea, is starting from here, from the CAPSAT camp.
Protesters remain undeterred, saying they won't stop until Rajoelina steps down. She says, in 12 years, no one has ever listened to us, which is why we are now insisting on the president's departure.
I think it will continue because our problem has not yet been resolved. Our problem is that President Rajoelina does not want to leave, even though the people are demanding his departure.
Since the protests began, the United Nations has reported that at least 22 people have died, and on Sunday, 3 individuals were injured near the CAPSAT barracks following gunfire. Bonolo Maribe, SBC News.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12:56 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, Cameroon's opposition leader has declared victory on Sunday's presidential election, despite government warning that only results announced by the Constitutional Council can be considered official. So today on #Africa Update we ask you, what do you make of the call by Issa Chiroma Bakari? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126. #Africa Update us.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutuli bwanji ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete, koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhudzidwa, funani chithandizo, chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi zonsezi pa wailesi yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And that's how we wrap Africa Update today. Continue with us on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. That's a wrap from us. Thank you to our producer Tracy Bumgard, our technical coordinator Lerato Mchobile, and our social media talent Butelezi. It's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.